Okay, the first project that I've actually been on and done for this unit is a project with a company called Euroscope. They're both filming and lighting, sound, and they do also get involved with set. I was involved in set on one particular project. It was on site for, I believe, 4 or 5 days. However, we left the day before the big pack up as there were more crew coming in to do that and we were not needed, as well as it was quite tiring after 4 days. 5 days would have just been fine, but it was nicer to go home. The work itself is very interesting. It was policing and security, so a lot of the content that was there I don't particularly want to show in case it infringes on any guidelines that they set up. I know particularly one of the ones that we were filming on site was guided as don't photograph, don't film, don't do anything to capture the imagery of or the acts that are being performed because they may be considered sensitive. The other interesting point is I recorded it before trying to figure out how to do this properly, so looking down the camera or trying to keep it concise when I'm talking. To that extent, there is stuff on that screen that isn't great, but it shows the space and I've watched it and it looks to be okay, so I think I'm going to play that, but please forgive the ums and ahs. Okay, day one. This is the set as it is. Once I can turn the camera around, but I'm lit. I've just been. So there's some marks on the ceiling. There's a lot of people don't know what I'm doing, so this is going to be weird to them. But there's 3 rooms, one there, this one which now has a disc in it and a rope, and another room which has nothing in it and is even darker. Tomorrow's probably going to be putting up material like that from around. Wow, my camera doesn't like adjusting to different things. This is probably going to need to be voiced over because it's terrible audio, but that's what I've done today. Ooh, as well as, just before I press the button, all that scaffolding. I was up there 3 meters off the floor on a foot wide metal box. Health and safety will love that. Oh, that netting is awful to put up, by the way. Okay, so that was me actually on site talking about what I've been doing, etc. It's hard to sort of go through because I have an understanding of health and safety and I know how I feel about health and safety, but I know that there were other people climbing the scaffolding at that height. I've fallen off of things as high as that, and I'm still here. My arm still works, and it's fine because it's not unsafe. It's risky. There is a risk, but there's a risk that I can fall over walking. Before, when I've been sitting at my desk there, I have a risk of normally when I sneeze that I'm going to hurt my shoulder because I normally sneeze quite violently. Up on that scaffolding was fine, which I mentioned at the end, but it is something to consider. When you're actually working professionally, it's what do you do and how do you act towards situations that may be unusual or not considered risk assessment criteria for yourself. Personally, I would consider how you're going to look at it when it happens. I know that when I was up there, I only moved around in a certain way, and I made sure that I did it carefully, because those are things that mean I was more safe in myself, and I know that I always kept at least 2 points of contact, etc., and I was safe in operating up at that height. For health and safety, they're going to hate it, because of course I was not perfectly safe, but for me, I'm fine with it. The actual set itself was very dark. That's because it was the evening. If you actually look at the time lapse I'm going to put at the end of this, or I might overlay it, there was a lot of lighting changes as it went into night. During the day there wasn't much light because it was setting up. When the show began at the end of the time lapse, it really started to brighten up because they turned up the lights. They also had the heating on, which was nice. I don't have any photos of the set put up at the other end of the venue, but I have some of the screens which I'll put in at the end, which will just show these big LED screens that we were using to build up, as well as the OB itself. On that side of the event, there is a lot more of normal-ish production stuff. A lot of the normal stuff that I did with this company before was stuff like music gigs, and by that I mean live concerts, which normally have big LED screens. They also have large speakers and a lot of staging. So it's not too different to what they normally do, but it's segmented and changed and worked in a different way to mean that it looks like what the client wanted. The structure of who was hiring who, I'll go through at the reflection stage of this video, but yeah, it was a more complex system that I was working inside, because the people that I was working for were working for other people that were working for other people, and it was sort of a chain of who's hired who and who is more important in the hiring, which is fine, but it's just a case of knowing it vaguely so you know who is eventually going to be paying for what you're doing, so you know who not to say, I wonder if you could just, or I think it would be better if you did, because it is nice if they think that everything is good, even if there is a small problem, which, I mean, most of the problems that were arising were stuff like the LED screens are just, the panels are slightly smaller in size by a couple of centimetres, which means the entire screen shrinks by about 10 centimetres, which is fine because they're an imperial odd size and they'd need to be something like about 1/4 inch bigger to be actually correct, but so long as they don't know, it's completely unnoticeable. The last thing that I will mention is a lot of the what I thought would be set work and building the set was actually a lot more freer construction. So a lot of the height was achieved by scaffolding, which I wasn't going to work on over probably the first tier, as there wasn't proper boarding and etc., because there were a lot of things that other people were hired to do. So there were scaffolders and riggers, and there were lighting and sound companies that came in and had kit borrowed from them, or they installed stuff because a truck that could have got it all there would have had to been about an Arctic at least, because there was one van of scaffolding, one van of electronic and sound engineering kit, one van or one company that came completely just for the screens that went on the side, a small box fan that came for just the LED panel screens, and a few lights. Also the box deal they had, but that was also quite bulky. All the material and that came in another van, and then all the products and decoration stuff that went inside to be sold came in about another 2 vans at least. It's a fleet of vehicles that had to be there to drop off or have equipment to provide trades to complete it. The most complex thing about it is how much there is, which kind of takes away from the sort of set building, because a lot of the set that I do later in the year or later in this project will be based around a lot more of my work and what I can create, what I can paint and what I can produce. But a lot of this project was what can be thrown together to create it, especially when, as I will review at the end, it was good for what it was because of what was potentially taken away if what I heard through several people was correct. But it's okay. There's not much that could have gone wrong, and the build went quite smoothly for what it was, although there are things that could have been better, like having an 8-people crew just specifically to do stuff when it's needed, rather than having such a weak direction at points. But that's probably more for the review of this project, to just evaluate how it was structured. But for now, that should be about it, and hopefully the time lapse and other parts are kind of showing what I was working on. Thank you, and that's it.